Hey friends, I'm Georgie. Such a warm welcome to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, I'll be chatting to Chad Lund. Chad is a triathlete, an oxygen advantage instructor, as well as an advocate for working with your body rather than against it when it comes to fitness. Chad and I got talking about how foundational and powerful the breath can be in terms of athletic performance, as well as how your fitness journey is so much more than simply stepping on a treadmill. Chad's story is so inspiring and empowering. I'm really excited for you to listen in on this one. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Let's keep on building that strong breathing community. The more people talking about breathing, the better. All right, let's get right on with the episode. So excited for you to hear this one. This is episode 11 of Just Breathe with Chad Lund. Hey Chad, welcome to the Just Breathe podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sat in an amazing sunny Californian place full of plants. I'm so jealous. Sat in freezing cold London.
I can grab my surfboard too.
No. Oh, that's cruel. That's just cruel. But I want to jump right in and just get on to your story, your journey. And I know we're going to talk a lot about triathlons today. I know you're really big on the triathlons, you're triathletes and both oxygen advantage instructors. But I really want to know where your journey began, where you picked up on how powerful the breath was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it might be good to start a little bit earlier, just sort of more of a journey of health and wellness.
Yeah, let's get the context.
So about, not to start things off on a low note, but about 10 years ago.
Keep it real, keep it authentic,
Yeah, so I'm a teacher by trade,
nice.
And worked in the school, worked as a teacher, and then became a principal and so forth.
Oh,
so I have
cool.
an education background.
Yeah.
But the low note was about 10 years ago. My mom had breast cancer, and she had a mastectomy, and my stepfather had his cancer returned. So he had what's called a liposarcoma. And it had returned and he passed away. So she had a mastectomy that year, and he had a cancer that had returned. And then the reason I bring up the school was there were two kids that were probably about 12 years old that both had cancer. And I think they were both leukemia.
Wow.
And, people are visibly, or they were very much like, oh, what is it? And I mean, it's very stressful. It's the dirt, it's the high power lines, it's the whatever it might be. And it got me to thinking, really, what is the cause of all these things? And I didn't set myself on a mission to cure anything, but just to kind of figure it out, because again, it was such a stressful time. And, it was like, obviously cancer is one of those things where it's very prevalent, but it was like, what's happening here? What's going on? Yeah. And the other part of that for me, I was not the healthiest kid.
Really?
Oh God. I mean, I wasn't, it's funny. I found a box of pictures. I'm like, okay, it wasn't that bad, but it was like, was, Oreos were great. I loved them. I had sugar cereal.
Who doesn't love Oreos?
Yeah. I mean, I made it worse. Like I took them apart and made double stuffs.
No.
So, I was probably an active enough kid, but it was one of those things where it was like, it didn't really help as I became an adult and I gained weight and whatever else. So at that same time, when there's this cancer issue, I also thought, I want to become, I literally shot for the stars. I'm like, I want to become an elite athlete. I don't even know what yet. And,
no run up, straight to the podium.
Well, exactly. And I also had issues where I had started and stopped with running. So I started running and I would get all sorts of pains. I was like 20 years old and I was running and I'd get out of bed in the morning and I was hobbling like I was 90 years old.
Wow.
And, my solution was to stop and then I'd start again. And I always liked the endurance stuff.
Yeah.
And, so I would go to this person or that person, like, oh, do this, do that. Nothing ever worked. And at that same time of, I want to be an elite athlete or whatever the actual thought was at the time, it's like, I want to go down this road of health and wellness. And, it's interesting when you think about, like, if I have an issue and I go to the doctor,
yeah,
and it's not like a bone sticking out, like that's obvious. But if I'm like, I've got a pain in here, I've got to take a feeling and translate it into words. And then you have to take what I'm saying and translate it into what you think I mean. I mean, if you think about breakdowns in communication, so I'm like, well, I guess the best thing is, what can I learn? And so I started back down the endurance trail and I started cycling actually, because that doesn't have the impact of running. And then and then I start running and then I'm like, I want to do a triathlon. I want to do an Ironman. Like I literally just jumped from like, I have my tricycle now. I want to go full bore out.
Yeah.
And I was training. And so this was 2014 was when I did my first full distance Ironman. And as I was training, it was like the wheels are coming off the wagon. I'm like, okay, I just need to make it to the event. And then like my body can explode and I have my medal in my shape forever and I'll never have to do this again.
Results, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did it. And as I went down this health and wellness journey, because it's not just about breath. And as I learned what I needed to, it's crazy because today we're, 20 years as an adult into it.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I don't have all the ailments that I did. And it's been this long health journey.
Wow.
And when I look at like what my coaching paradigm is, it's breathing, it's primal movement's probably the best way to put that. So, I mean, I've got a wall full of certificates, original strength, the breath coaching, and the movement, the breath, and basically a proper diet with recovery. You put those together and it's amazing what happens when you put consistency into all those. And that is what's allowed me to become healthier as I've moved on, because as I was saying before we started recording, you can be, you could obviously be sedentary, very unhealthy, a couch potato, but you can also be extremely fit and very unhealthy as well. You can be, very wired. The people who are wired but tired, they can't sleep.
Adrenaline addicts, right? Or dopamine addicts.
Well, and what happens there is you are,
You're fine.
Your cortisol levels, your adrenal levels, you've just burned yourself out. And stress is something so important to talk about, because stress is stress, whether it's some, high profile job working in the stock market or going for a run. I mean, going for a run is stress.
It's stress on your body. A lot of people don't realize that actually, do they? It's a stressor.
Yeah.
Even though it makes you feel good.
Well, exactly. Someone's like, hey, I'm working 80 hours a week and I get up and I start work at 5 and I end work at whatever time. And I got to go to the gym. And it's like, you're wired and you're tired. And then you go and you make it worse. Yeah. And it's like, it's one of those strange things. It's like, well, would you have been better off not doing it? So, and the problem with triathlon or with sports, with competitive sports is I want to be better. Maybe I just want to be better than myself. I want to be better than you, and I want to beat everybody. And that's when you really start to get competitive. It's like, okay, I did this. And when you start to see success, it's like, oh, cool. I can do this. And, I find it really interesting when people talk about primal or ancestral, what our ancestors do. Oh, they got up and they foraged for food and then they spent the rest of the day grooming each other. And it's like, well, how do you know?
Right.
Go back and see, but they weren't doing an Ironman every day. They weren't putting themselves through it. And you know, we have, especially here in America, more is more, harder is better.
Right.
The
bigger, the better.
That badge of honor that I have worked out so hard that I can't move. And that, if I can use a really technical medical term, that sucks. Because it's like, it's like, do you want to have to contemplate sitting down or standing up because your legs hurt so much? And, again, in the beginning, it's easy to be that way. You're an adrenaline, it's like you said, you're an adrenaline junkie. And it's like, oh, I want to run. And I have one workout from years ago that will stick in my mind. And I remember looking at it for 2 weeks beforehand, and it was like a 12-mile run in the morning, and it was a 12-mile run in the afternoon, and it was a 12-mile run the next morning. Yeah. And I'm like, I was nervous. I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, you're just like, but you know what's crazy? They got easier and easier. And by the time I was done, I'm like patting myself on the back. I'm like, huh. But today I look at that and I think, if your goal is to be the champion of practice, to say, oh, I crushed it day in, and you're just going to crush yourself. And if you look at heavy duty, long-term endurance athletes, they look terrible.
Right.
They are wearing themselves out. So I think endurance, I mean, I haven't quit. I didn't stop doing it, but I found the right way to do it. And it's just like breathing, so I did a seminar this morning with a car dealership. So a friend of mine owns a car dealership, and he's like, hey, can you help us out? We've got COVID. Everyone's wearing a mask. In general, everyone there is kind of unhealthy. And I said, sure. And, it was interesting because the basis of what I was saying, it's like, hey, look, you're already breathing. Because trust me, if you weren't, you wouldn't be here. Yeah. But if you do it optimally versus suboptimally, it's going to make a huge difference. It's like from little things like, if I breathe properly, my hands and my feet are going to be warm on a cold day. Like that's a small, easy thing. But if I breathe optimally versus suboptimally, I may be very relaxed and calm, or I might have a ton of anxiety because my brain's not getting what it needs, oxygen and blood.
Yeah.
So the journey to breath, like I said, years ago it started. I mean, there was probably 20 years ago I stopped eating junk food, and there's been all these increments.
Yeah.
And, with the breath, the funny thing is, actually, I don't know, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was working with a triathlon coach, and he wrote a book on breath. And I was like, run with your mouth shut. So I tried it and I made about 4 steps and I'm like, I can't do this.
Hell no, this is hard.
Well, but see, here's the funny thing. Cause I was explaining this last week, we had Thanksgiving. I was explaining explaining this whole process to someone. They're like, shut up. But then they're like, hey, do you wish you had known this before? And I said, yes and no. I said, there's a time when you're finally ready to hear it. So whatever,
I agree.
5 or 6 years ago, I had someone say, hey, breathe through your nose. And it was like, it had all the same information that through Oxygen Advantage and through the James, all the current stuff that's coming out. And he said something to me. He said, if you can't breathe through your nose while you're running too fast. And at the time I was like a flippant child. I'm like, no, I can run way faster and I can do that. But what he was saying is like, you're running too fast for like basically your aerobic ability.
Yeah.
Meaning that, and here's the funny thing about endurance. Most people have it backwards. Anything over about a mile is an endurance sport. So whether it's a 5K, a half marathon, but most people train anaerobically, meaning they go to the track and they bust out sprint after sprint. They're like, because it's all about how fast did I go?
And it's that ego, right? It's all about that ego.
It's the ego, but it's also kind of a lack of knowledge. And part of the process,
that's true. You've got a point there. Yeah, 100%.
Part of the process is trial and error. So, this morning when I'm saying, hey, do this, do this, do this, all this knowledge is great. But even when I have to admit, I got into the holiday season last week and I got lazy.
Right.
And, it was like, wow, I can notice that if I'm not doing my breath exercises, if I'm not doing my movement exercises, my body starts to not perform optimally.
Yeah.
And, again, with what I was saying versus the aerobic versus anaerobic, it's like, if I get out there and I run really fast, In fact, I was talking with someone the other day. They said, hey, I'm training for a half marathon, and my Garmin, which is the worst coach in the world, your little watch is telling you, I want you to run the fastest mile you can. And it's like, well, why? You know, if you're going out and you're going to run a pace, like let's say 8 minute per mile pace, but you can run 6 minute mile for one. Well, that, you'd never do that. So,
no.
The journey of health and wellness is a lot of it's trial and error. So again, at 20, I was hobbling around. At 30, I'm like, okay, I can ride a bike. And then I'm like, then I decide again, I'm going to do an Ironman. So, and then I was like, I'm going to explode till I get there. But now it's years later, and it's crazy because like I've created a garage gym. I got a treadmill, I got a sauna. By the way, if you want to buy any piece of equipment, a sauna is where it's at. But it's amazing when little lights start to pop up. And the reason I bring up the treadmill is it's super specific. Like there's no hills, there's I got a fan on me. It's very much the same every single time. Yeah. And what's crazy is that before, mouth open, breathing hard, lactic acid building up, legs are sore. Now all of a sudden, mouth is closed. And the one selling point I have to any other athlete is, hey, when you close your mouth, you don't lose all that water. So,
40% moisture loss. It's crazy, right?
And here's something, if I can just go off on a little tangent.
Absolutely.
So if you think about a hot race, or a hot day, whatever, you're going to drink a lot. But the reality is, and this is dependent a little bit on the size of the person, is you can only absorb about 1 liter to 1.5 liters of water an hour. In other words, if you try to drink 3 liters, you can get it in you, but you're going to sound like a fishbowl just moving around, right? And you're going to feel kind of funky. And worst case scenario, you'd suffer from hypernatremia, but that's kind of extreme. Yeah. So the thing is there's a limit to what you can put in. Mm-hmm. But if you're running in, like I did a race where it ended up being 99 degrees on race day. It was 75 the day before. So,
whoa, that's a hot one.
I can't do that for Celsius, but I mean, it just one of those things, like it like came out of nowhere. Yeah. And because it's so hot, I'm going to sweat like crazy, and I'm going to lose more than I can put in. So here's the light bulb: close your mouth, you're going to lose less. And it's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow. And that's the part where, as an educator, true learning, you can take this book and you can read it as fast as you can. Mm-hmm. But if you're bringing in information as fast as you can, it's kind of going to, it's like if stuff's just flying onto your plate as fast as possible, stuff's going to be falling.
Yeah, you might catch a few words here and there, right? But you're not going to really digest the whole essence of it.
Exactly. So it's years in, and again, it's a trial and the error. It's being injured, because the injury part's the best. I mean, it's not the best, but it's the best teacher. It's like, why is this happening? So what I can tell you is, over 10 years into the triathlon journey and probably 20 years of being an endurance athlete, I don't have any pains. I don't have any injuries. Everything works properly, and it's like, it's crazy. And I'm sitting there just running away, and, it's like I'm getting better as I'm getting older, which that's not ever supposed to happen. Right. But that's the reminder of, normally people as they age, decline. And it's like, well, let's not be normal, because normal's not good.
So what's the difference? Can you pinpoint the key to the difference?
So the first thing is focusing on health. Health and fitness are not one and the same. Again, you can be extremely fit and extremely unhealthy. And the most extreme versions are the people that die. So you'll read about a 35-year-old healthy person, ran a marathon and died of some sort of cardiac issue. And the biggest point to that is, well, what happened? And there could be some underlying issues. There could be health, but when you overdo it, if your heart especially, you're scarring it on a regular basis, right? These little micro tears. And if you do that too much, I mean, if it's just a bit, a little bit of stress is good. A little bit of stress causes adaptation. A lot of stress causes you to go backwards. And if you think about scar tissue, it's inflexible. So if you're constantly scarring your heart, you go from this very flexible muscle to a very inflexible muscle. And the heart is rather important. And it's rather and the interesting thing about the heart, so there's I'm sure you know this, but there's 3 types of muscle in the body. You have your skeletal muscle, the visible muscle we see. You have your smooth muscle, which is, you know, digestion and so forth. But then you have cardiac muscle. It's just what exists there. And that muscle has a unique property in that it never tires. The downbeat is it's time to relax. Yeah. And if you mess with your heart, it'll mess back. And that was the thing where it's like, I can keep doing this stuff and I don't think I'm going to kill myself. That's the worst case scenario, but I'm definitely going to be less healthy. And what's become kind of interesting is to read people's reports, like, hey, they did a race. And it's crazy because it's this badge of honor that you look at, and it's people are, you know, they're from something that they had to, how shall I say this politely, you know, relieve themselves in the bushes because whatever was in their body needed to come out, to the point where they were hooked up to IVs. And it's like
wearing a medal of exhaustion, right?
And it's like, you're not hurting yourself. Yeah. You know, I want to be 70, 80, 90 years old and maybe not doing triathlons, but and still be active and still be healthy. Yeah. And to answer your question, to pinpoint it, it's about putting health first. So breathing is a part of that. Movement's a part of that. And one of the other certifications I have is in what's called original strength. And
is that back to that primal thing you were talking about?
Well, yeah, it's almost based on watching children. And you know, as a teacher, if you ever go watch kids like on a playground, you know, they're on the monkey bars, I mean, the stuff they're doing, it's like, I dare you as an adult to use the monkey bars. It's like,
I've tried, it's so hard. Yeah. It is embarrassing.
It helps when you weigh 40 pounds, but you know, the thing is that if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So it's like, the basis of the original strength is it's moving your body. So it's like there's 5 points to it. One is the head, you know, it's moving the head around. And you know, if you go out into the world and watch everybody on their phone, they've got this, you know,
forward head posture,
nerd neck, the anterior head carriage, but they've got this going on because they're looking down, they're always hunched forward. If you're on a computer, you've got this, and if you don't reverse that, you're going to be in trouble. So it's, you know, a lot of head nods. It's rocking is the most amazing. Get down on your hands and knees and just rock back and forth. And for me, what happens, if I can use a really technical term here, I've noticed that your hip gets all wadded up. You know, like imagine, that's my technical term.
Oh, wadded up.
Wadded up, exactly. Hey, I've been watching the Great British Bake Off, so I can give you
English accent. We're gonna hear that at the end. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about running, sitting, whatever it might be, your body it's compressing. Yeah. And what this does is it decompresses it. So it's crawling. Nice. So at first you're like, I have to crawl it? What? And I was crawling the other day. The dogs love it, right? The dogs are like, "Whoa, you're down here, we're playing." But I was crawling, and all of a sudden my hips are just going, "Yeah, this is great." It's this movement. And so like I said, this morning I was working with the managers from a car dealership, and I was inadvertently giving them car analogies. But you know, if you have a car and you let it sit for a year, it's not going to want to do what it's supposed to do. You know, it's just like the nose. If you don't breathe through your nose, it'll just kind of stop or not function properly. It dries up. So the basis of that is it's primal or almost childlike movement, and even rolling, a lot of vestibular type stuff. It's also crossing the midline. So, you know, as I walk, I'm crossing over. So there's a lot of brain function there. So this is responsible for this. This is responsible for this. And I think I'm doing conscious breathing as well. So I have multiple things going on there where, you know, if you breathe through your right nostril, it's activating the left hemisphere.
Yeah. And that's all the way back to pranayama, thousands. And this is the crazy thing, right? Is that like, this stuff is now coming back into the media because people are just grasping for answers for how do I improve my health. But it's like, this is nothing new. This has been around for thousands of years.
You know, it's funny because I honestly think this is like the biggest stressor, the news app.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it don't get me wrong. I don't want to get rid of my phone because, you know, I'd never find anywhere. I need the directions on it. But if you think about progress, what are we progressing to? So you get a new phone, you get you know, it's like, it's this computer. I mean, it's crazy to me. We couldn't do this 5 years ago.
Of course,
no.
Of course
you know,
not.
we would have to get like camcorders out and I don't know what. We'd have to go down to a TV station to be able to do this. And now I can open my computer, press a button, and here you and I are talking halfway around the world. So progress is great in some ways, but in other ways, like comfort is not a good thing always. You know, it's like if I sit down and it's so comfortable, now I'm not moving, you know, and it's like some of the people I used to work with, I mean, they literally would sit all day long. I don't think we're both sitting right now, it's not the end of the world, but when it becomes that's it, and they've got their lumbar chair and it's comfortable and they're not moving and they've got their drink right here and it forces them not to do anything, then that's when we have a problem. So again, going back to the breathing, to what I was talking about with the movement, all it is going back to doing things how we're naturally meant to do it. And again, to pinpoint that health is before modern times, how did we do things and why were people healthy? And it was just very simple. You know, you get a good night's sleep, you eat food that is not, you know, that avoid modernized food as much as possible. You know, like I said, keep the levels of stress down. And even if that means, hey, I worked a 12-hour shift today, well, go relax. Don't go to the gym and work out for 2 hours type of thing. So it is really listening to your body.
Yeah. And I think if we go way back to the sort of primal, and like you said, we'll never know, but it is that it seemed that those people moved in for function and for survival, you know, because they had to, they didn't go, I'm going to go to the gym because I need a six-pack. They had maybe, you know, a very fit body as a result of running to feed themselves to survive, for purpose.
Exactly. It's kind of funny when you think of a gym. Someone goes to the gym and they lift weights for no purpose. Like, you know, hey, go to your garage and move stuff around. Or even better, and yes, I admit I have a treadmill, but it's like you get on a treadmill and you don't even go anywhere. You know, it's like
where are you going?
And it's kind of like if I wasn't training for a triathlon, then I may do things differently. But it's one of those things you can't go to a gym right now because they're all closed.
Of course not.
But, you know, it's like you're on a bike or a treadmill, or like I said, you're lifting weight up and down. And like if you went in your backyard or you in a yard in your garden, right, you were lifting up dirt. I mean, there's a purpose to that. So it's really funny sometimes when you think about what we do and how we do it. And you know, have you ever read the book Born to Run?
No, you know, I've heard of it though, and it is high on my list. I want to read that book. It sounds absolutely brilliant.
Over to see if I can see it. So Christopher, I can't think of his last name. So the book's all about the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico, in the Copper Canyon. These guys they can run like 100 miles. Yeah. Like, and they're wearing sandals, and which is another thing, you know, it's like, if you look at running shoes nowadays, I mean, the foot's perfect. It's meant to run, but yet we screw it up by basically shodding it, you know, just like horses. And
these specialized Nike things.
Well, and the thing is check this out. What do those shoes do? Oh, they give ample support. Well, what happens when you give something or somebody too much support? Well, they don't have to do anything. So all of a sudden, I mean, your hands and your feet have half the bones in your body and probably tons of muscles. And if you put them in a shoe, it's basically like a really fancy, expensive cast, and they don't work anymore. Now, the problem, like, I would not recommend people run barefoot if they haven't done it, just because they're not used to it. But it's a shame because the foot is just meant to. And it's like, again, these deep dives that I've taken, it's like when you run, like if you take somebody who is, imagine you went somewhere where you still find kind of Aboriginal tribes, someone who's never worn shoes has a different foot strike than someone who has. And the difference is walking is a language like anything else. When you put your foot down, it's feeling what's below you. So if you stood on hot coals, for example, to give you extreme, you're like, oh, I got to get off that.
Right.
If you're on sand, you're like, this is great. You know, if you step on a Lego, you move real quickly. And there was an analysis done where it showed a foot strike of somebody who would never worn shoes, somebody who sometimes did, and sometimes someone who never did, all barefoot. And the person who always wore shoes, their foot strike was massive, like
really
a lot of pressure, versus the person who never did, and it was very light. So
that's interesting.
Who never wore shoes, their legs, their feet, like the mechanism of their body was such they were in touch with the ground. So that might sound woo-woo, like, oh, the energy of the ground.
No, I'm so about it. It is a real thing. Science is proving that now.
Yeah, versus the person wearing the whatever, the Nike or like the Maximal shoes that have come out that look like they're about 5 inches taller. This thing.
Give you a bit of height.
Well, exactly, which is fine. I'll take it. But the problem is that you're completely losing communication with the ground.
Yeah, no communication with the earth.
It's so cushioned that you're hitting really hard and you're probably doing damage to your body in the process. So
it's like you stop listening almost, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. It's kind of like, you know, if you're not, have you ever read about like every so often someone will be born with a strange something where they don't feel pain?
Yes.
Like yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and at first, like, that's great. I would never hurt again. And then they're like, no, it's not great because you break your arm and you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit what's happening where you're losing that communication. So all of a sudden you're hurting yourself sort of unknowingly. And at first it doesn't hurt as bad, but eventually you build up to those injuries. So again, to keep going back to the question that you asked, what can you pinpoint it? It's focusing on health first, because you can, like I said, you can be super fit. Sorry, this is my gauge over here. It's my spectrum.
That's fine. Yeah.
I need an actual like sign that I can show you. You can be super fit and very unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you can be healthy and not fit, but being healthy is, in my opinion, the key to longevity. And that's not just a healthy body, but it's a healthy mind. Because, you know, if you think about, if you were to sit down and watch like a gory war movie on TV, you know it's a movie, but your brain doesn't. And it's going to create this stress. So you're going to go into the sympathetic state because you're seeing like horrific images.
A stressful situation. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, and that's, you know, it's kind of weird every so often when I watch an old movie, I'm like, God, it's based on dialogue and acting, where movies today, everything's just blowing up. It could be a love story, they're still blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you start counting the stress, whether it's on TV, you get in your car and there's traffic.
Social media, big one.
So social media, oh my goodness, social media is the worst. Well, you know what I think the worst is actually our comment sections.
On the bottom of anything. Oh my God.
It could be
YouTube,
like, hey,
Instagram.
Well, it could be like, hey, I like bananas. Oh, you're whatever. It's like you get
you're an asshole.
Well, it's just like. It's somebody who's just sitting there seething, going, all right, it's my turn. I'm going to talk about, and it's like,
I will be seen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, maybe we don't need to give everybody a voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
too much of a good thing.
Exactly. So it's a focus on health from all perspectives. And when the breathing part of it, so when you look at hierarchy, you can go weeks without food. Depending on how much extra you have, you can go days.
Yeah.
And there's a book called Waterlogged written by Tim Noakes. I don't know if that name is familiar to you. So he's the professor in South Africa, and
awesome. Yeah.
There's a story at the beginning of it, and they talk about this guy, and I can't remember his name, but he went out with I think he was a rancher in Arizona. So Arizona had 196 days this year over 90 degrees. It's a hot place.
Man.
Right? And so he goes out with his partner into the desert. And this is like, call it 100 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And they get lost. And they have 2 gallons of water. And his partner's like, hey, I'm gonna go look for help. goes look for, never sees him again, right? And so
Shit.
after 8 days in the Arizona desert in the middle of heat, he's found. And like his lips have shrunk, his eyes have shrunk.
Oh my
And
God.
he made it for 8 days. And they asked him, hey, why'd you make it? He's like, well, I wanted to kill the guy that abandoned me. But it's funny because it's kind of an endurance. It's meant for athletes. But it's not a funny story, but it kind of is, because it's like, okay, the guy made it
ironic.
for a week. He made it for a week in the desert without water. But then you go to oxygen. You can make it for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes. I mean, you've got the free divers that are crazy.
7 minutes at the most, 7, 8 minutes.
But you and I, the average person, 2, 3 minutes uncomfortably, maybe a little bit longer, and then damage is going to set in. So it's like, when we look at that hierarchy, we eat too much. I'm part of that. We can go plenty of time. I mean, we go the entire night without water, without food, but you can only go so long without oxygen. So the first thing is, it's important.
Yeah.
Second thing is, how you do it is important.
Yeah.
Because again, you look at that 20 to 25,000 times a day you breathe. If you do it optimally, you're going to see good results. You do it suboptimally, you're going to see poor results.
Absolutely. So. It sounds, I'm coming back to in my mind now, that person that can't tell if they've broken their arm. And I think that hugely relates to the dysfunctional mouth breather who has no idea the damage they are causing to their body while they're asleep, while they're at rest, who is blissfully unaware why they're snoring, that snoring is even abnormal. So many people do it, that obstructive sleep apnea.
Problem, yeah. That's normal. Oh, it's normal. It's fine.
It's fine.
Doctor. You go to a doctor. Oh, yeah. Get a mask or take medication. Because the problem is we can't sell this. We can't sell oxygen.
But it's free, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's really tough to market and sell free stuff. But that's the part where you want to say, hey, is this normal? Is this how you want to do it? And I don't know about you, but when you tell people, I'm assuming you tape your mouth at night, since we all do.
Yes, every night.
And it's one of those things when I'm sure you get the same thing. When I tell people, they're like, what you do? Wait, what you?
Everyone thinks I have this crazy kinky side now, because I'm like I tape my mouth and I'm like, no, it's for health reasons.
That's funny. That one I haven't heard. No,
I haven't heard that one. They're like, oh yeah, really? You do that to yourself? And I'm like, wait, no, not like, no. That's funny. No, I think I get more like couples are like, wait, I can have my husband keep his mouth taped shut. Like, yeah, I can take my children's mouth. Great.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, just like what I was saying with everything else, this takes a few times to get through.
It's a journey.
It's like, why do you tape? That's just and then you get I don't keep my mouth open at night. I'm like, what are you watching yourself? How do you know?
Yeah.
And and it's like, this is like I said, if this was one of those things like, hey, I've got this product that I want to sell you for a lot of money, I can see being skeptical, but this is simply breathing.
Yeah, it's so foundational. It's life. Oxygen is life.
Absolutely. We are aerobic creatures. We need oxygen, along with the plants behind me and everything else. I mean, oxygen is it's it. It's like I said, that hierarchy of importance. It is at the top, in my opinion. I've seen something else where they're talking about, oh, well, your psyche is important. I'm like, yeah, but if your oxygen's off, how your brain functions is going to be off as well. So, it's. I think, going back to your original question, if I bring my wild tangent back to triathlon, is that at first it's tough, because you're like, this is harder to do. Yeah. And as Patrick says in the training, people breathe through the mouth just because it's easier, and when if you're running hard and you're running harder than you're capable of, going back to the guy that said you're running too fast. And again, at first I'm like, well, I can run faster, so you're wrong. Where now I'm like, okay, now I know what you're saying. You're saying I'm running faster than my entire mechanism is ready to do. In other words,
I'm pushing my body now past its limits, right?
Well, okay, so go with me on this one. So do you know who Eliud Kipchoge is?
The name rings a bell.
So he's the guy that ran the sub 2 hour marathon last year. Right. So he's running at a 4:20, I think that's 4 minutes and 25 seconds per mile pace, which
what
is insane for the entire marathon. So he's running like,
that's insane.
I don't know what the average pace is for a marathon. If you take like,
probably like 9-10 minutes a mile, right?
I've actually never run a marathon. I mean, I've
Me
run
neither.
the distance.
It's on my list.
Go for it. I've run the distance within a triathlon. But the marathon in an Ironman is different than an Ironman, because you're like 6-7 hours into it and you're like going, holy shit, what? I got to run a marathon now?
Yeah.
Versus just starting out there. So, I mean, your top guys, like your Mo Farah, your guy, he
a British guy.
Yeah,
he's fast. He's
very fast. He's probably, I think he runs about a 2:10 marathon. So, he's running a 5-minute mile. So what I'm getting at is these guys are able to run a 5-minute mile for 2 hours, but you can probably run a 5-minute mile too. And I can as well.
Yeah.
It's just how long can we do it for? 10 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And my point being is that I know how fast I can flat out run for 5 seconds, right? I've done it. It's like, I think I've hit that sub 5-minute pace. And they set up this treadmill. You've probably seen this online where they want to test people. So anyone can jump on this treadmill. How long can they do it? And every single person that got on it can do it, meaning that we all have speed. In fact, in that fight, you always think the fight or flight is I'm running from the saber-tooth tigers.
Yeah, we need speed. We have it.
We have that speed to get away, just like the gazelle or the rabbit or whatever the prey is. It has enough of a one-time all-out effort. So on your energy you have the ATP, CP pathway, the
adenosine triphosphate.
Right. So that first one is like 3 to 15 seconds. That's like I got to lift a car off somebody. I have to run for my life. I have to.
That's your shotgun. Yeah.
Right. So we have that. But when you go from that to anaerobic to aerobic, where can I function there? And I can no longer run that 5-minute mile over here. Maybe I can run an 8-minute or a 9-minute or 7, whatever it might be. And that's really what it comes down to, is knowing how your entire body functions, for example, in that aerobic space. And that's another part of the health, is to say, hey, I know I can run this fast. And if I try to run this fast for a long period, I'm going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about, again, I'll use endurance sports. Someone will go ride 100 miles, like, 100 miles, I'm going to put that in the endurance bank. It's like, okay, hold on. Are you sure you're making a deposit, or did you make a withdrawal? And the big thing
that's clever.
Well, because there's a balance. Like, you want stress. So you want to say, because if I said, okay, I've never done anything and I'm going to go run a mile. And the first time I go run a mile, it's like, oh, it's tough. And then I run a mile. Yeah, exactly. I run a mile tomorrow. Maybe it's a little less tough. And eventually, a year later, I've run a mile. This is nothing. It doesn't make much of a difference. I have not created any stress. So now maybe I want to run a mile and a quarter or a mile and a half. I want to create a little bit of stress. And I need that stress for adaptation.
Yeah.
However, if I don't pair it with recovery, then what's going to happen is I'm going to go backwards, not forwards. So I want to make sure that I'm recovering as well as moving forward. And it's this balancing act. I mean, it'd be great if you could just do the one side of it. Just say, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to destroy myself every single day. And I'm going to deposit. Yeah. But if I'm not recovering, I'm just making withdrawals at that point. And that's the health part of it. If you don't recover properly, I can't tell you how many times I've said, hey, less is more, less is more.
It was the freaking phrase of my life this year. Ever since I found the oxygen advantage, less is more has changed my life massively. So no, I'm right there with you. But it sounds like this balance you're talking about, that the key to that is awareness. Like you're coming
absolutely.
Knowledge. It's all about, if you're not aware of your body, how on earth could you know what it needs? And again, going back to that car, right? You wouldn't get in a car without knowing where you're going most of the time. You usually know your destination. And so why would you not become, or at least maybe a better way to put it is that you at least know your car is working before you drive it.
Well, and it's all, part of it's awareness and part of it is paying attention to that. So if you got in your car and it's
Yeah.
like, click, 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 and you're like, nah, we're fine.
Right.
And, you know, all of a sudden it breaks down on the side of the road, and it's like, you knew something was wrong, but you ignored it. And that can happen a lot too, where it's like, well, this hurts, but I'm just going to run through it. And what might become a small impediment becomes something much larger.
Yeah.
And that's a big key to it. It's not just aware. You're absolutely right. And the thing is if something really hurts, you should be aware of it. But normal is also a problem, because I can't tell you how many people are like, oh man, I can't wait to suffer. And I'm like, okay, maybe you need the mouth tape and you have some weird sexual fetishes, because it's like, who wants to suffer? You know? And
yeah.
like, and that's, I think that's the number one thing, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to
prove.
work so hard that when I cross that finish line, I'm going to fall on the ground. Someone's going to need to resuscitate me. All manner of gross things are going to come out of me. I'm like, wait a second, there's got to be a better way. And what's crazy is that the way I work out, and I did take a step back, you know, I work out way easier. And even I'll use an example like yoga. Yeah, I think yoga's great.
Yeah.
From a movement perspective, right? And even this has taught me, it's like, because you get in there and you think, when you first take yoga, it's all about, all right, I'm going to stretch farther than you. I'm going to be the best stretcher in here.
I'm going to do a freaking handstand.
I'm going to handstand. I'm going to do a handstand, and then my feet are going to go.
Yeah, they're going to touch my head.
There's this one girl. It's like, I don't know if her like spine is like disassembled. Like the stuff, I just sitting there going, huh? And you look over there and you're like, oh, that's going to be me. And it's like, that's never going to be me.
No.
And two things that are crazy are, one, I have like taken a big step. Well, I don't do that because it's all closed down too. But you know, taking a big step back, and it's like, you know, instead of the pose where you're trying to just go as far as you can and everything's shaking, just back up a little bit. And for me, like, yoga is about breath first, movement second, breath third, movement fourth, and then flexibility comes in there. And there's one instructor, he's great. He said, you know, flexibility in yoga is just a byproduct of it.
Yeah.
Like, you become more flexible.
It happens. Right.
And the other thing was, when you talk about less is more. So the times where I'm like, every day, I'm like, oh man, I'm it's a 30-day challenge. And then, you know, I missed like 3 days, and it's like, ooh, you know, I forgot everything. But you go in there and you have the best class of your life because you rested.
Yeah.
And that, you know, rest and recovery is where adaptation and advancement takes place.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it'd be great if you just rest and recover and you're a champion athlete. You got to do the work, but if you don't do the other side, there's a problem. And again, to keep going back to your question, that's it. It's the health side of saying, hey, I need the is it eustress? What is positive stress? Is it eustress?
I think so. Something. Yeah.
So
something. I don't know. Let's just call it stress.
So the
workout stress.
The limited positive stress to create adaptation.
Yeah.
And then the balance, there we go. It's all balance. The balance to recovery, so that you can keep doing this. And also to realize, as much as it would be great to train as hard as you could and make adaptations as fast as you can, because the problem, the same thing with weight loss, is that in the beginning, your adaptation and change is huge.
Yeah.
And then it slows down. And then it gets to the point, like if you take elite athletes, they've got like this much room to grow because they're so elite. They're so far at the pointy end of the spear. Mm-hmm. And they're really just kind of sharpening at that point. So it's like, it's kind of tough when you're like, man, I went from this pace to this pace, but now I went from this pace to this pace.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to keep making the same progress.
Doesn't work like that though, right?
It's like a bolt score, right? Like, my bolt score is just tapered. I was like, come on, one more second.
Yeah,
you know,
mine got so stuck at 30. It's still there, still stuck at 30.
Oh, mine's gone backwards, you know?
Yeah, it happened. This is the thing though. It's that, like, why are we so attached to the outcome? Because we miss the experience that way, right?
Absolutely. You're just, and that's the thing. If you're just trying to get to the end, why are you doing it? You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, even something you don't enjoy, whether like maybe you have a job you don't like, it's like, you have to do it. So how can you enjoy the process? There was, kind of a funny story, but years ago I used to go to work and I'd listen to the same radio station and you know, every Monday, it was, oh, it's Monday, Mondays suck. Oh, I hate Mondays, blah, 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 blah. And then after a while, I'm like, wow, if you hate Monday, you hate 1/7 of your life.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's a good point.
You know, I mean,
I love Mondays.
Yeah, life. Well,
New week.
Every day is the same now, but
yeah,
you know, if you think about it, like life just goes on, and you don't get it back. So it's like you can waste it, or you can make it more meaningful.
Yeah,
and that's, you know, that's the thing about the oxygen, like the oxygen advantage of breathing properly. It's like life becomes more enjoyable when you're functioning properly.
And you can do more with less. This less is more, right? I mean, it's more enjoyable.
Absolutely. Well, if you think about, you know, like I said, for me, it's maybe a bit of a game, but it's like, how can I continue to make myself healthier and healthier? Whether it's, you know, use like a body, mind, spirit type of thing, where it's, you know, physically speaking, I don't have the ailments. I used to have, you know, niggles and little injury, you know, the ankles, the Achilles, the knees, the whatever it might be. And, you know, those have predominantly gone away. And, you know, it's that basic movement all the time. In fact, you know, what used to be, oh, you got to do these big workouts. It's now like, I came up with this idea yesterday, actually. It's called the all day workout, where, you know, you spend 5 minutes doing this, go back to what you're doing, spend, you know, once an hour, you do 5 squats or some lunges or head nods, or you roll around, or you do like one of the breathing exercises. And it's like, if you're constantly doing that, you're not going to get stuck in a pattern quite so easily. Than if you think about that person, think about somebody in a job where they're sitting the entire day, and they probably get up to go use the restroom or to eat food or something like that. And hopefully not at the same time. And I'm saying, but I mean, yeah, that's right. But if you think about sitting or whatever it might be, you're cementing a pattern. You're saying, okay, my body, and there's a, you know, when you think about it from a flexibility or term, it's like, if I'm sitting, I'm creating all these 90-degree angles where my hip flexors are shortening. My posterior muscles are lengthening. And as a result, instead of standing up, I might have these weird tilts forward or backwards. And the body's amazing, because if I do tilt forward, I'll tilt backwards. Or, you know, like, for example, your eyes will always look level on the horizon. So, you know, the next time you see somebody who maybe is a little on the older side, and they, you know, they've got scoliosis or something, look at their eyes, they're always even. So the body's doing whatever it can to correct itself. Make
that homeostasis, right? That balance.
So for me, it's always about getting back to, how can I make myself healthy? And, you know, with the breathing, that's number one. You know, I don't ever want to take a pill for anything.
No, me neither.
You know, if I have anxiety, it's like, how can I ameliorate the symptoms? How can I look at what's happening here? And it's like, if I'm holding my breath, if I'm breathing shallow, holding my breath, you know, what's that doing? And it's really interesting for me. I don't know if this happens with you with clients, where when you talk about the ventilation rate, and how the more you breathe, the less you get, because of you know, the dead space in there, where it's like, you know, you breathe 6 times a minute versus, let's say, 24, and it's like 5.1 liters gets in there versus like 2.4.
Yeah, oxygen efficiency is up by 20%. It's crazy.
Yeah, you know, and when you can show them that on a piece of paper, then you get the aha moment. It's like, oh wow, it's like, I'm breathing, but it's going nowhere. Like, I'm just, you know, I'm walking around in circles going nowhere, or I'm on a treadmill going nowhere. So
yeah, have you heard of these oxygen bars, where people in airports and stuff, they're in some airports, possibly in the US. They just breathe in pure oxygen. They do like flavors and all things like that. And it's the best business idea in the world, right? Because they're breathing it in, breathing it straight back out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you know, so I went to Boulder, Colorado to do a race last year. And it's cool. It's like a mile high. So, you know, the first day I was there, I did a workout, and I was like, okay, there's no oxygen. And this is before really getting deep into this stuff.
Yeah.
And I did go into an oxygen bar, and it's gimmicky, and you know, it's one of those things where you've got something that's trying to get around what you should be doing naturally. And I think, you know, what's interesting about that is, the air we breathe in is about 20% oxygen, right? That's what we're meant to breathe, so it's like all of a sudden you don't need to change it and do more. And that's a huge American problem. More is more.
Yeah.
We just need
more is
more.
more, good. Less is more.
Better. Well, the right amount is what's good.
Back to balance, right?
Yeah, like, hey, if you work out, great, go work. If you went running for 1 minute, that's not going to do anything. If you went running for 20, 30 minutes, great. If you go running for 5 hours, that's way too much.
Yeah.
Even like, let's talk about sugar for just a second. Like, sugar is the devil in white. It's the worst thing in the world. But the reality is we use glucose, we use it. So it's like a little bit probably is not the end of the world. Adding it to every single thing you eat is a problem. So that balance, I think, is what's really important.
100%.
It's and again, there's no award for balance. There's the award for, I didn't get a medal because I had a good night's sleep, but I got one because I went and killed myself outside for 12
Yeah,
hours.
but what's the medal? The medal, I think, is longevity, vitality.
Exactly.
Happiness. I think it's the best medal in the world.
You're absolutely right. And so look at what you're talking about. So now you're talking about internal versus external validation. So if you need likes or kudos or thumbs up or whatever it might be on social media and everything is external, well, you're at the mercy of all those external factors versus saying, hey, my own internal validation or whatever it might be is fine. I know what I'm doing is the right way for me. And as a result of it, hey, I'm living a healthy life. I'm, everything you just said is what's important. And that's, I think, with some maturity, what's happened to me, where before it was like, oh man, everyone's gonna be so impressed that I did. Where now it's like, I did these things and you do something monumental and you cross the line and you're euphoric for like 5 minutes. And then you're over.
Just like when you get a like on Instagram. And the interesting thing about social media, of course, it's so prevalent right now because we're all in lockdowns, but most of the time anyway, is that if your whole validation comes from those likes and other people's opinions, then you are completely giving away your experience to other people because that like, right, is their perception of their experiences on you. And so you're then missing your own experience by going, no, I'm gonna just wait and just see if that was good enough. It's actually
exactly,
which is a crazy thing. It's the most important lesson I've learned over the last few years. And
well, it's like going on a trip and taking pictures. And it's like, did you experience the trip or do you just have something that you can post? And
big one.
That's you're 100% right. Where it's like, let's just take the breathing there, the mouth taping. I mean, if you went around to 100 people like, hey, what do you think about taping your mouth at night? They're like, you're weird. Apparently, you're fetishy. You're weird. You're whatever. It's like that's just weird and crazy.
Yeah.
But you and I, through our experiences training, know that this is very beneficial.
Yeah.
And again, if I say, hey, here's a picture of me at the beach, or here's a whatever, here's a thing I posted. Where I make funny duck lips and I look at the camera in a certain way, and it's like, if no one likes it, does that mean I suck? And if everyone likes it, do I mean the greatest person? And it's also fleeting, because again, imagine you did something and everyone thought it was great. How long is it going to last? And it's like a dopamine hit. It's only going to last until the next time that you get that.
100%.
It's kind of like, do you want fireworks or do you want a slow burning candle? It's like,
right,
boom and then down, boom and then, or do you want this thing that just
flickers?
It just goes.
Yeah.
And it flickers. And the other thing, it's one of the biggest things, because one thing I didn't touch on, but is a little bit diet too, is that when everything is synchronized, it's like I'm like a diesel engine, not, what do I call it? Petrol, not gasoline. But I'm
petrol in the UK.
Petrol,
yes.
A little.
This podcast is totally worldwide, international, so you can call it whatever you want.
Gasoline. Right. Whereas perfect. Whereas like what I mean by the diesel engine, it's just this burn that just goes. And it's like I get up, energy all day long. I go to sleep, and it's not it's not some weird, like, oh, I was doing something, I had 15 cups of coffee. It's just this natural, my body is functioning optimally because of all the health reasons that I stated. There's no magic to it. There's nothing, I didn't take a stimulant. I just did what I was supposed to, if you want to put it that way. And as a result, I'm functioning at a very optimal level. And that's what it all comes down to, is functioning at an optimal level. And once I've done that and I put health first, now I can go do triathlons. I can go do endurance sports versus, screw it, I'm just going to do this stuff anyway. And, you know, falling off as I go along.
Yeah, because you've built a strong foundation, the same as a house, right? If it doesn't have the foundation, it's going to fall down.
Yeah, that's the perfect example, right? Your foundation is wobbly. It's whatever. It's a leaning tower, and all of a sudden, you're constantly worrying about. And that's a great example with like injuries. It's like, oh, I've got this thing, and I've got to balance it.
Yeah, you might live there for a minute, but
or it's just suboptimal. Just like if you're mouth breathing at night, your sleep is going to suffer. If you're eating junk food, your body's going to suffer. And the problem is that most people are unhealthy. Are not optimally healthy. And the problem with that, well, there are a number of problems, but is that it's normal. And normal, it's like, you get older and this happens or that happens. And then what happens is it's like, well, okay, well, I'm normal, so I'm fine. It's like, well, normal isn't always where you want to be.
No.
It's more of a matter of optimal. So, and there's sacrifice to it, you know? I mean, I don't go out on benders, and I don't eat whatever I want to eat, and I don't, you know, it's like 9 o'clock hits, I'm like, bedtime, you know, versus, you know, if you caught me when I was much younger, I'm like, let's go do something, right? So it's just about making choices too. And again, when you put all those together and you consistently implement them, again, you'll get to that optimal level, in my opinion. And that's everybody. There's no secret there. It's not reserved for really healthy people.
Yeah.
Because it's always about wherever you are, how can you move that forward?
You don't have to be a triathlete, right? To move. Yeah.
Even I mean, if you're an asthmatic, if you're overweight, if you're young, if you're old, if you're injured, whatever it is, whatever point you're at, how can we move you to a healthier spot?
Absolutely.
You know? And the fun thing is, actually, the more unhealthy you are, the more space you have to move, and it's kind of like you can really see a difference, right?
100%.
What you're saying, like your Bolt score isn't changing quite as much because you're already very healthy. You're already doing everything you need to do. So you're going to have that little, so every so often it'll go back a little bit and forth and so forth. So
100%.
I don't know if I touched too much just on actual training and triathlon.
No, I loved it. I have one more question for you because I don't want to take up too much of your time. So it's actually like a big ambition of mine one day to do a triathlon. I love to road cycle. I love to run. The swimming part I need to work on. I can swim. I love the water, but that'd be the part that most scared me. But where the heck do I start? 3 disciplines. It's pretty intimidating. Where do you start with that?
So first off, to answer the swimming, or to address, everyone says the same thing. Swimming
really
scares the life out, right?
No, it's scary.
And triathletes are typically bad swimmers.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they just are. and the reason why, so triathlon originally, triathlon started in San Diego right here. Actually, it's kind of cool. This is right where it started. And what it was swimmers, bikers, and cyclists are like, we're the best. No, we're the best. No, we're the best. Okay, fine. Let's put this all together and see who comes out on top. And it's actually not really a fair comparison because the time it takes to do everything is very different.
Yeah.
The beauty of the sport is that you know how to do them all. So if tomorrow you had to do it, you could do it. And there'd be like my first triathlon, there was a lot of lessons learned. One of the best ones, if I can get personal on the show, is proper lubrication.
Interesting. Because the water and this.
Well, it was a saltwater swim. So, I mean, there were areas of my body that I was like, and I wore a surfing wetsuit, not a swimming wetsuit. It looked like, I had been hanged. I was done, I was like, oh, that was terrible. So there's things you learn along the way that somebody could tell you, but you kind of have to experience them. But the reality is in the beginning, you know, when you talk about that sharpening the tip of the spear, well, in the beginning, you're kind of the end of the spear, and it's just swim, bike, and run. And the number one thing you want to do is build up your aerobic base. Right. So in other words, Like I, for example, run much slower than I used to because I'm building my aerobic base. And
Gotcha.
so, as I said, there's three things that I focus on. One's, you know, oxygen advantage,
Yeah.
breathing, and so forth. The other one's the original, the movement. And the third one is, call it heart rate training. So there's Dr. Phil Maffetone, his MAF method.
Oh, nice.
And essentially what he says is, you have two zones. Like they might say, oh, you have zone 6 and zone 7. And it's like, those are great, colorful graphs that you can get looking at a farm and a polar. But essentially you're either aerobic or you're anaerobic.
Yeah.
And again, if you're running anything above, even a 5K, a 10K, that's aerobic. And if you try to run it anaerobically and you're huffing and you're hyperventilating, dumping CO2, not letting your body function properly, that's why people bonk, and they're just flying, and all of a sudden they go slow. So the other thing is build up your aerobic engine. And I don't care if you're riding a little towny bike or a $10,000 tri bike, just ride your bike. So for now, it's like, let's say you say 1 year from now or 2 years from now, I want to do this triathlon. In the meantime, build your aerobic base, get in the pool and swim, ride your bike, and run. And
do you do it separately, or at first and then sort of start to put them together, or?
Well, that depends. If you've never, if you're like, I sit on the couch and I don't do anything, well, you need to ease into it.
Yeah.
For me, like I said, I was a runner. I had to stop, and then I'm like, okay, I could ride a bike.
Yeah.
And so I was riding for years, and then I made the switch over. I started running. My best discipline, swimming.
Amazing.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know why.
Lucky you.
Well, it's for me, I'm a technical person. So it was like, swimming's a super weird sport because if you bike inappropriately or run and what I mean by inappropriate, like, I don't know, like you're pounding your legs, your body's gonna give you feedback. When you swim, about 90% of your body weight is subsidized by the water, meaning that if you weighed 200 pounds, you only weigh 20 pounds in the water.
Right.
And because you've got such an assistance, you don't really know what your body's doing.
No.
So swimming's a little bit like breathing in that the repetition's very high. If you do it properly, you're great. If you do it improperly, you're not. And I'll give you an example. Like they'll talk about a crossover. So your hand should kind of just go out right in front of your shoulder.
Yeah.
If it goes out, if I cross over my head, what's going to happen is I'm going to adjust. So I'm going to swim like this, side to side. So imagine I want to swim straight, and now I'm like a car with like a misaligned wheel. And if I keep doing this, I keep correcting myself. So what happens is, instead of like take a 25-meter pool, instead of swimming 25 meters, I probably swam 28.
Yeah.
Just correcting myself. So to answer your question, yes. I mean, 1 day a week right now, my training is it's about half of what it normally is because there's no races. Every race I have is canceled. And I don't need to be at a high level burning myself out. And so, you know, I swim when I can because the pool is just not accessible. I run, you know, I don't know, I probably run 3 days a week, and one day I'll do a bike ride and run right after that. Because the big thing about triathlon is with the running is it's not how fast you can run, it's how fast you can run after riding a bike. And the first couple times you do it, your legs are like jello. You're like, this is weird. I've been in this weird, especially if you see a triathlon, like, you know, you're leaning forward. So you're in this very locked in position, and then all of a sudden you have to start doing something different. So, you know,
that's weird.
If you want like a base recommendation, it's just go out and do those things.
Yeah,
you know,
sounds good.
If you're super excited, don't go do them like, I'm going to train 20 hours, you know?
No.
You know, it's just about building that base, and that's what you want to start with. And like I said, if you want to do a triathlon in a week, that's a different story versus a year. But
no.
It's really just building it up, feeling comfortable. You know, the swim it looks stressful because it looks like there's just a lot of people going at once, and there is. And I have been kicked and punched and hit before. It's never been bad, you know. Someone and nobody does it on purpose, you know. All of a sudden, because you're just, it's a weird thing. It's like they just turn it into a water polo match. But you know, you do it a few times. Like your first time, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. But that's great. That is so great to be a beginner, because that's where you learn.
Right.
So, you know, and that's really what it comes down to. And you know, it can be an addictive sport, and it's fun because a lot of the people in it are very, you know, they're awesome people. They're very
I'm sure.
welcoming.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I mean, you have, you know, going back to good old England, you have like one of the best triathletes in the world there. So you have a pretty good, when Alistair Brownlee, you have a really good contingent there. So, you know, like I said, just jump in the pool when you can, swim when you can, bike when you can, listen to your body in the process. Don't worry. I did this where I was like, I got to get the best stuff and spend $1 billion. And, you know, you're in a race and you're on the super bike and a guy on a Schwinn passes you. And you're like, okay, well, maybe I didn't. And it's funny because it's the simplicity of it. The longer I do this, the simpler it gets. In fact, you know, I used to have heart rate, all this stuff on, and now I do at least one run a week where I have nothing, you know, no watch, no
listening to your body.
Yeah, just that's exactly. And it's listening to my body, and it's listening to my breathing, and it's listening to it, like not literally listening, but it's feeling how everything's working. And the thing is what I know is I'm doing way more. There's way more benefit than there is detriment. And again, you know, when I do a 2-hour run, there's a little bit of damage done to the body there, but it's all it's something that you can repair very easily.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to, you know.
Nice.
And I can, if you like later, I can recommend coaches and things like that, or someone you can look into, or books that'll help you there. But the reality is you're doing 3 sports. You definitely, you know, if you were just running, I'd say, hey, do all your running, but you have to divide it up, and there's a little bit of attrition in there depending, you know, because you can't do them all as much as you'd like to. But
right. Awesome.
The beginning's easy because it's just do the 3 sports. You know?
Cool. Where can people listening find you? Where are you? Are you on Instagram? Are you on? Yeah,
I've got like 12 followers. I'm terrible with that stuff. I literally set up an Instagram a while. So this is the funny part. I really like being a student more than anything else, as much as I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
So I have a website that I think
Nice.
still has the launching thing on it. I have an Instagram. I swear to you, it has basically, I don't know, like 12 followers and pictures of my dogs on it, because you know, I went to do like a workout. It's funny. Like one of my dogs went in the sauna. The other one is like, they're like sitting on the yoga mat.
Love it.
And my dog does down dog. Like
I love that.
His down dog is right on. So
if people want your advice, or want to ask you questions about triathlons or anything like that, or even to work with you, where can they get
I do love all that stuff, as I'm joking around, but if I got to look at it actually. So the best thing, so the website,
we can put it in the show notes.
It's Apex Endurance Coaching.
Okay, cool.
And then it's just Chad at Apex Endurance Coaching to
Apex Endurance Coaching. I'll pop it in the show notes for sure. There'll be a link there, so people listening can just click right on it.
Yeah, I definitely picked the absolute longest email possible.
Great.
To, you know, so those are probably the best ways. Is just to send an email right now.
Yeah.
And you know, so like I said, my main things, because I have running coach certification, gait analysis. I have a lot of certifications. I have some really specific stuff, like how to stretch the vertebra of the spine. But all those are like my really specialized tools. But the main things that I do focus on are aerobic building. Hey, we got a guest.
Sorry.
They are building your aerobic base, proper movement, and breathing. And breathing has probably become the absolute top one. But those are the things that I really can help somebody with. And then I have, like I said, a lot of auxiliary tools when there's kind of specialty things. But yeah, I'll give you basically the website and the email address, which is the best way. And then on the websites that I mentioned, Oxygen, you can find my coach's portal and things like that too.
For sure. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Chad. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure. It's been brilliant. And I just feel like I want to get up and get on my bike and run and swim all at the same time now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It was great to talk to you.
Awesome.
And like I said, I really enjoy talking to somebody who's like-minded, and
Yeah.
And, you know, you get to talk not just about mouth tape, but all the other weird stuff that we do that really, really is very beneficial to overall health and wellness. So
Awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.